What's up, people? My name is Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, and I bet you no one saw this one coming. So, in my life, I've been fortunate enough to see lots of bands live. And the three that I've seen the most, by far, no competition with these three. The Grateful Dead, who I started seeing in the 80s, followed, went to Europe to see them, was a full on Deadhead. Fish, did many a Fish summer tour, 93, 94. Fire Drill, Fire Alarm went off Cincinnati, 94 tour. Fresca in Minneapolis, 95, 97. I did a lot of Fish tours. And Blue Oyster Cult. Never did any Blue Oyster Cult tours, but it was one of the first bands I'd ever seen without my parents. Went with a friend's older brother to see them on the Revolution by Night tour. Went to see them the following Club Ninja tour when I had an experience similar to Patterson Hood's experience on Let It Rock. No, that's not the name. Let There Be Rock. On that song that's on the Drive By Truckers Southern Rock Opera. Let There Be Rock. Let There Be Rock. That song, the one where he goes to see Blue Oyster Cult when he's only 14 and things happen. I had a very similar experience as that. But I've seen Blue Oyster Cult dozens and dozens and dozens of times. And I recently saw them. They played here in San Antonio at this event called Fiesta, which means party, which is literally like a 10-day party the city throws itself. Like almost all the money goes to charity. It's an absolutely amazing feat of drunken fundraising, just absolutely ridiculous. You know, food events, music events, parades, everything. You get everything. But BOC played. And it was like it was a festival show, so it was a little shorter than normal. And they kind of tended to just play the hits. But I realized at that point that it's probably the last time I need to see them, unless they completely revamp their set list in the near future and just start playing things they've never played before. Probably not. I think I've reached my limit with Blue Oyster Cult. Plus, they have a brand new guitar player that kind of steps up and takes a pretty lengthy solo, at least on this night in Days of May. I think he's in like Astronomy. I think he solos. I didn't see that the other night. But he's not taking over Buck Dharma's role, but he's definitely doing a little more of the meatier chops, it seems. And it was really interesting to think that maybe when Buck Dharma and Eric Bloom stopped wanting to be Blue Oyster Cult, that this guy would take over and it would become this weird sort of like Joe Russo's Almost Dead version of Blue Oyster Cult with this like shredder guitar playing, kind of doing these reimagined versions of Blue Oyster Cult tracks, which I think I would be incredibly down for. But other than that, it was just like they felt like an aging band with a young buck coming up to kind of like make sure they're in sync. It was the first time I'd ever felt that way seeing them. Plus, the stage, there was the Tejano stage, there was an R&B stage, there was some other country stage, and this was the greatest hit stage. So it all just felt kind of bad. But I still had a good time, still had a good show. But anyways, I thought I would just quickly rank their albums. Not going to go into too depth on these, just because I've already talked for 3.5 minutes. Oh, the Frank Zappa connection. Because this channel is going to somehow always connect back to Frank Zappa, is I thought I saw a poster at one point, like a playbill or something, in which Zappa and BOC were on the same bill. I Googled it and did some internet research. I couldn't find any information about that at all, so I don't think that happened. But two things. I do know that at a 74 show, I think it was November, Frank's introducing songs, and I think it's when he's talking about Pygmy Twilight. He says something about how we're gonna like get heavy and we're gonna get our Blue Oyster Cult dance moves on, or we're gonna show you that we've got Blue Oyster Cult dance moves. He makes this completely random, out of nowhere Blue Oyster Cult reference, and then also Zappa's got King Kong, Blue Oyster Cult's got Godzilla. They've been in a movie together, thus they are connected. So here we go. 14 albums. I'm not doing Bad Channels because it was essentially a soundtrack. Not doing the live ones, though I do think of the three main live ones, not anything more recent. I don't know there are more recent live ones, to be honest with you. But of the three main live ones, On Your Feet, Some Enchanted, and Extraterrestrial Live, I think Extraterrestrial Live is darn good and is worth getting and is a fine live album. But it was the first thing I ever owned by BOC, so I will forever love it. But anyways, on to a quick discussion of their 14 albums and how I view them. Yeah. Number 14, The Symbol Remains. This came out a couple years ago in 2020. It is their most recent album after quite a long time off. I haven't given it very many listens, and really the only reason I think I listened to it more than once was because it was Blue Oyster Cult, so I was going to sort of give it a shot. It's got some catchy songs on it. The opening 2 tracks, I think That Was Me and Box in My Head, are very catchy, and Box in My Head is I think going for a Burning for You, Dancing, not Dancing but still, it's Dancing in the Ruins vibe, kind of a little bit, that weird pop rock, slightly heavy edge that they go for. That young buck guitar player, Richie Castellano, has a couple songs that he's written on here that are actually not bad. But for the most part, it's just kind of pop rock that leans a little heavy. Buck Dharma plays some good solos. I will say that Buck Dharma is always delivering the tasty solos, no matter where on this list we rank. If Buck has a nice pocket to solo in, usually those are pretty good. It's just the songs sometimes in these first 5 or 6 albums are just kind of weak. And this one, I don't know, it just didn't blow me away, but I did think it was not that bad. The new one, Symbol Remains. Number 13, Curse of the Hidden Mirror. This came out like 20 years ago, right? Like 2001. It's kind of in the same vein as the more recent one, where it's just kind of a lot of like 4.5 minute pop rock songs with some tasty solos, a little bit of like riffage and some heavy crunch. For the most part, though, this got a lot of love when it came out, and I think a lot of like diehard fans think it's better than most people rate it as. But I guess I'm not that much of a diehard fan, because I do think their more recent stuff, despite some of the positive reviews, is just not that memorable. Like, I enjoy it when I listen to it, and like I'm like, oh, this is a nice little change, or I like this little riff, or again, Buck Dharma's delivering a good solo. But I can't say that any of the songs like stick with me, or if I made like an essential Blue Oyster Cult playlist, anything from these first couple albums would be on it. So yeah, not bad listen. If you really, really love Blue Oyster Cult, you might enjoy these. But other than that, I don't think it's anything remarkable. Curse of the Hidden Mirror. Yeah. Number 12, Imaginos. This came out, when did this come out? The late 80s? 88, I think. And this is a weird album. I'm not even going to go into like the backstory of this. It was supposed to be like an Albert Bouchard solo album, and it was recorded over a span of many years, and there's a whole bunch of guest musicians, including Joe Satriani. I think Robbie Krieger plays on it. There's a redoing of Astronomy. They sort of rework Subhuman into a song called Blue Oyster Cult. There's a couple good tracks. The title track, I think, is really good, and it's just overindulgent guitar mess. It's an ambitious, it's a concept album, but some of the songs are just forgettable. Like, there's just some of them are just, I look at the titles and I'm like, I've probably listened to this album like 70 times. I'm like, I cannot remember a single like hummable melody from that song. Del Rio song I liked. It's the first side ends with a couple good ones. The second side's a little bit stronger, but for the most part, it's a more intriguing album, and it's compelling, and I always return to it thinking, oh, I'm going to get it this time and it's going to be amazing, but I've yet to reach that point. Probably never will, but it's a more engaging listen than the other two that are on this list, but it's still not that essential, or it's just more of an intriguing entry into the Blue Oyster Cult catalog. Also, I'm not going to be reviewing the one that's just simply them recording their songs. That's considered one of their official studio albums. That's not on this list. I've never even listened to it, so I don't know if those recordings are good, to be honest. All right, anyways, on to 11. Number 11, Mirrors. And really, there used to be a rule that we just don't talk about Mirrors. It exists, but we don't talk about it. It's very poppy, kind of cheesy. Blue Oyster Cult does cheese well, though. Very polished, very ear candy-ish, but not necessarily in the way you want it to be. Like, I don't want the melody of Mirrors stuck in my head. I don't want it there. It's got one bona fide classic in The Vigil, which I think has been a pretty common, has hit their set list a lot frequently, which is an awesome thing. Um, but yeah, it's 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 a it's an attempt to be really syrupy commercial, while still trying to have a little bit of heaviness. Succeeding once in the Vigil, maybe a couple other songs try to be heavy. Then there's like a doo-woppy 50 side kind of where they carry over from Agents of Fortune where it worked. So yeah, no, it's a weird. It's We don't talk about mirrors, but it sometimes is a guilty pleasure. They still play Doctor Music live, which is much. It's probably the worst song on this album, I think, despite how horrible the other songs are. I don't know, man. It's a weird album, but it is so Blue Oyster Cult, but in all the wrong ways. I have no idea what to say about this. Mirrors. Number 10, Heaven Forbid. It's from 1998. This has three fantastic songs. See You in Black, which they used to do live quite a bit back in the day, it seems. Great lyrics about wanting to see you in black, which means your husband will be dead, but only it turns out that her husband's abusive. So it's like a good thing that he wants to see her in black. Really good lyrics. A good Eric Bloom's delivery song. Harvest Moon, which they still play live, which is kind of your Burning for You, Dancing in the Ruins, upbeat type, Buck Dharma type song. Some pretty dark lyrics. Nice little jam in the middle. Definitely in one of their more interesting balance of pop and like proggy metal rocks, whatever they do, it is that Blue Oyster Cult does. And then Live for Me, which on the second side of the album, the second side, towards the latter end, has a really just nice kind of stretched out ending and feels like one of their more developed, mature songs. The rest of the stuff isn't bad. There's great solos and great grooves and great jams throughout it, just not as memorable as these three songs. And I think the sound is pretty good for like a late 90s album. I like the drum sound on this a lot. There's just a harsh starkness to it that I really like. But yeah, Heaven Forbid, man. I see most people talking about late stage Blue Oyster Cult and that the new album and Curse of the Hidden Mirrors are sort of their like return to form type things. Man, I completely disagree. I think had they had two more songs that are like See You in Black or Harvest Moon or Live For Me, like this album probably would have jumped a couple spots and would be up there maybe with some of the best. This album, I don't know, surprises me every time I go back to it. I really like this album. Anyways, number 10, Heaven Forbid. Number 9, Revolution by Night. First album I got from this was a cassette of Extraterrestrial Live, which I just absolutely loved. I actually had to buy a second copy of that, of the cassette. I could have just, I think I owned the CD at that point. But no, I did not. I did not own the CD at that point. I had to buy a second cassette because I actually played that so much that it snapped one day. I may have mistreated it because I rewound it a lot also. But anyways, and then this was the first album that came out after that live album. And boy, did they embrace all the bad things of the 80s full on. There are some horrible drum sounds on here and some cheesy synths and probably the worst set of lyrics they've ever written. But man, is it all catchy and enjoyable and fun. The first side of the album, I still think is kind of strong for BOC for what they do. Take Me Away is a good song. Eyes on Fire, really cheesy lyrics, but it's a really good Eric Bloom delivery, I think, on his vocals, like one of his better ones. And then Shooting Shark, which shouldn't work. It has what sounds like a drum machine playing like the same drum pattern for the entire like 7 minutes. You have a whole wash of keyboards, these crazy guitar lines, this really just an amazing bass line. It almost sounds like, reminds me of Level 42. I don't know if you remember Level 42, what their big hit was, and there was something about you, baby, so right. It reminds me of that kind of like 80s, not necessarily techno, but that new wave sort of vibe. But it works, man. The lyrics are so incredible. Some weird story about a broken heart and a lover leaving town, and just each verse builds on the story, and it's an amazing song. And it's just such a weird sort of standout in their repertoire because it sounds so dated in 80s, but it still sounds good and it still works. They still do it live. And they jam it pretty hard. It's a fun song to hear. But that song I think is great. Veins, which follows it, is one of the silliest songs ever, but man, is that good. And then Buried in the middle of side two, there's a song called Let's Go, Let's Go, Let's Go. B-O-C. You can be whatever you want to be. Oh, horrible, horrible lyrics. I remember getting this, and I must have been, what, when did this come out? 80, 83, 84? I remember getting this, the dates there. And me and my best friend, who also loved Blue Oyster Cult, we heard that Let's Go song. And even as like 14 or 15-year-olds, we looked at each other, it was 85, we looked at each other and we're like, these are some bad lyrics, man. We knew back then these were bad lyrics, but the melody is so good and it is so ridiculously catchy and it is such a good, fun rock song that it won me over. And I acknowledge that on an objective level, it's some pretty cheesy, dated 80s stuff, but man, is it fun music. It's your typical Blue Oyster Cult stuff. So, and Buck Dharma, every time he plays guitar, it's just fantastic. Yeah, number 9, Revolution. Number 8, Spectres. This has 3 of Blue Oyster Cult's all-time greatest songs on it. If I do a songs list, as I'm morally obligated to probably do, 3 songs from this album are going to be on that list, and they are Golden Age of Leather, Death Valley Nights, and I Love the Night. One being one of your sort of Blue Oyster Cult, lots of little like a little mini suite with a lot of different kind of grooves and riffs throughout it. Death Valley Nights and I Love the Night just being 2 spooky, incredibly effective ballads. Fantastic songs. But the rest of the stuff, other than say maybe something like Are You Ready to Rock, which is like a fun number, I think it's kind of forgettable. Again, I enjoy it when I listen to it, but I don't think it's their strongest written material. It's just either, I don't know, just doesn't do it for me. So, but those 3 songs are so good. And the album is laid out pretty well, and that you have like your best 3, you have Godzilla, Golden Age, Death Valley Nights. You have a really strong opening, and then it kind of weakens a little bit, but then Are You Ready to Rock in the middle, beginning of side 2, kind of gets your interest up, and a couple more songs, and then I Love the Night peaks it. And so it's a well-balanced album, but again, the highs are up here, and everything else is just kind of, as far as my ears go. Number 8, Spectres. 7, Club Ninja. Don't come at me about Club Ninja. Another very dated 80s sounding album. This was at the end of 85. Had a kind of a minor hit with Dancing in the Ruins, which is kind of an obvious sort of Burning for You type, Buck Dharma-like follow-up type poppy number with some great guitar playing. But I love the opening cover, White Flags. Pretty much sounds exactly like the original by the Leggett Brothers, but they give it a little Blue Oyster Cult meat in it. Perfect Water, one of Buck Dharma's greatest, one of their best songs, sort of a very airy, watery ballad, just weird lyrics about Jacques Cousteau and just great guitar lines, and just one of their best songs. Spy in the House of the Night, which is a fun, kind of upbeat rockin' song. And side 2, kind of a weaker side. They try to get a little heavier. It doesn't always succeed, but When the War Comes is a fantastic, ridiculous song. It has a spoken word thing in the intro that doesn't work, I think, at all. Almost sounds like it's supposed to be like ominous and foreboding, but it almost sounds like a sports event. And then there's a drum solo section at the end with like bursts of a guitar in it that just seems overindulgent. But the main riff in this song, it just this really kind of feels like war and death, and it has a very, very creepy vibe. An underrated, absolutely fantastic song. And the side A on this, other than what is the third song? Make Rock Not War. Is that what's the third song is? Which is kind of just and Beat 'em Up is kind of bad on side B. There's a couple cheesy songs on here, but the stuff that works, I think, works phenomenally well. And it was like the 3rd or 4th album I ever got from them, so I will always love it. I bought it the day it came out. I think it was like the day after Christmas or right after Christmas or right before Christmas. I remember going down to Licorice Pizza and buying this and just loving it. But yeah, Club Ninja, number 7. Number 6, Fire of Unknown Origin. Early 80s, kind of, I don't want to say sleek, but they got it down. This sounds like a really good, solid, well-produced studio album. I think there's a lot of sort of understated creepiness and ominous and some nice like changes that kind of go. Like the title track, I think, is a really one that they should be playing live all the time. That sadly they do not. Burning for You, an obvious hit. Veteran of the Psychic Wars. One of those songs that I do prefer live because they stretch it out and they jam it live, but I do think this studio version is fantastic. Almost all of side B is absolutely perfect. Joan Crawford, an absolute classic. Yeah, just a really good. Again, this is kind of like Club Ninja in that there's like a kind of a brighter, more varied, upbeat, poppy side A, and then sort of a darker, more like we're going for weird stuff side B. They complement each other well. The production on this, I think, is amazing. And I think the songwriting is just a little bit all around better than the stuff on Club Ninja. A really good album, but not quite as good as the next five, which I think are just Blue Oyster Cult at their absolute best. But yeah, number 6, Fire of Unknown. Number 5, Coltosaurus Erectus. Yeah, this is where things just get consistently a little more heavier. They're not ashamed to use keyboards. They're not ashamed to get super cheesy and have like Don Pardo fake rock announcements. They're not afraid to make really, really good. They're not afraid to introduce a saxophone. Somehow they do all the things they shouldn't do, but it works. Black Blade, just this like overindulgent, just keyboard drenched, but just absolutely. They even got like a spoken like effect breakdown thing at the end. Monsters, which has just some of the best grooves ever. Divine Wind, which is kind of creepy. Deadline, which is creepy. All of side B is just these really weird, strange songs. Unknown Tongue, Hungry Boys. It's a really strange Blue Oyster Cult, still being kind of a cultish, but flirting with some pop stuff every once in a while. Mixing things up with some saxophone and a lot of keyboards. Not really experimenting, like this isn't a great breaking ground and rock music type thing, but they're definitely like expanding their sound a little bit. But the songwriting is just, I think, top notch from Black Blade all the way through Unknown Tongue. Just Lips on the Hills, Lips in the Hills, Lips in the Hills. How many bands write songs about lips in the hills? I can't think of another. Yeah. Number 5, Coltosaurus Erectus. Number 4, Agents of Fortune. I don't want to talk about Don't Fear the Reaper or Extraterrestrial Intelligence or the awesome opener of This Ain't the Summer of Love, or I don't want to talk about any of that. We're going to talk about Tattoo Vampire because they got a song on here called Tattoo Vampire, Sucking Your Skin. How many bands have songs about tattoo vampires? This album, again, it's kind of a little all over the place. It's got some like side A, again, you have like a short little rocker, then a little like almost 50s type thing in True Confessions, and the absolute classic inspired by the Birds. Don't Fear the Reaper, the great live number, Extraterrestrial Intelligence. You got The Revenge of Vera Gemini, very strange, weird, just a strange song. All of side B, the absolute incredible, the lyrics to Debbie Denise. Oh, just one of those like, I'm a rocker on the road and you're just a girl in a town and you kind of don't mean anything to me. I'm going to make it clear to you in this song. Just a phenomenal closer to the album. Such a phenomenal song. Morning Final, which is a weird, almost synth prog number. Man, it's just, again, a little bit of everything on here. Always some good Buck Dharma guitar playing. They're kind of stretching out, but the songwriting is good enough that I think all of it works, no matter how like out of character it is, even though at this point they're clearly defining that they really will just do whatever they want to do, and yet for some reason it all still kind of sounds like Blue Oyster Cult. Agents of Fortune, number 4, fantastic album. Number 3, Tyranny and Mutation. This album would be number 2 if it weren't for the fact that the second song on here, OD'd on Life Itself, I really don't care for. It's kind of like Blue Oyster Cult's Can't Afford No Shoes. It is the second song on what may be otherwise be a perfect album, but it ruins the flow of the album for me because I just don't like the song that much and it's a little too long and a little too repetitive. Other than that, this album is is perfect. Red in the Black opener, one of the greatest openers ever. If you like Fire Hose did an excellent live album called Fire Totem Pole, Live Totem Pole EP, Live Totem Pole EP. But they cover Red in the Black, as I think Minutemen used to cover Red in the Black. Fantastic version. Hot Rails to Hell, Seven Screaming Dizzbusters, the sort of weirder, more they never play this stuff live. Side B, which include Teen Archer right in the middle, which is just one of their like all over the map, sort of like really catchy pop numbers. Wings Wetted Down, Baby Ice Dog, Baby. I think weren't they playing Baby Ice Dog for a little while, like 5 or 6 years ago live? They brought that back. Yeah, it's just another perfect, like incredibly great album that's just a little bit hindered and slowed down and momentum ruined by what I think is a weak second track, OD'd on Life Itself, which is a live favorite. It's been played live for decades. I know a lot of people like it. I just don't. And thus, this album falls to 3. Number 2, their debut album, Blue Oyster Cult. This has been number 1 many, many, many times in the past, but right now it's number 2. Don't know why. Perfect album. Another perfect album. This is their kind of a little raw, a little faster, very Long Island meth rock type vibe. Transmaniacon MC just comes out just aggressively speedy and like bikery. You got an early version of the Red and the Black and I'm on the Lamb but I ain't no sheep. You got just classic songs on here. Cities on Flame with Rock and Roll is on here. Before the Kiss of Red Cap, the haunting, incredibly told story with some of Buck Dharma's just amazing licks. And then came The Last Days of May, Stairway to the Stars, She's as Beautiful as a Foot, which has this really almost really weird, creepy, low-key vibe. Screams, which is kind of a psych rocky number. Workshops of the Telescope, and the country-ish closer, Redeemed, which, again, one of their best songs. There's not a bad note. It's perfectly sequenced. It flows perfectly. There's not an issue with this album. Absolutely perfect. But sometimes you just want to hear songs on another album a little bit more, and that would be number 1. Number 1, Secret Treaties, their third album. Side 1, kind of all segues right into each other. Songs, it pretty much, there's just no silence. So as soon as one ends, it seems like we're immediately off into the other. Career of Evil, Subhuman, Dominance and Submission, ME262. What an incredible run of 4 songs, each a little bit different, but definitely more of the same vibe, but like well connected and exploring different territories. Side 2 gets a little more exploratory, a little more sort of a little more proggy, I guess. KG Cretins, and then Harvester of Eyes, which has one of their best riffs ever. Just amazing. Flaming Telepaths, that whole thing. There's a weird connection between the two, like a music box. So that feels a little proggy and experimental. And then that goes into the absolutely beautiful Astronomy, which just kind of closes the album with some nice little riffs and some weird, mysterious sort of BOC type world building mythology that would try to be put forth a little more in Imaginos, but that again did not work out, as I already discussed. But yeah, number 1, their best album, though the top, that and their original are pretty neck to neck on a daily basis. But yeah, number 1, Secret Treaties. Say about Blue Oyster Cult. So I got that off my chest. I will probably never see them again live, and a part of me is like a little like I got to pay them tribute for literally 40 years of live music, amazing shows. So thank you, Blue Oyster Cult. Thank you to all Blue Oyster Cult fans everywhere who have supported them so that they're still touring. I will probably not ever go see them again, which is a sad feeling. Spend my concert tickets are too expensive these days to go see Blue Oyster Cult for like the 87th time. But thank you. But yeah, I'm going to talk about my songs probably tomorrow or the next day, and then I'll get this out of my system. Then we'll finish King Crimson and go on to Bob Dylan, and then return to Zappa at some point in the future. But anyways, yeah, all right. Thanks for watching. Peace, love, subscribe, Godzilla, all that. And don't fear the Reaper, people. Don't fear the Reaper. All right, bye.